So 145 ಶುರು ಮಾಡೋಣ. 144. I think at least we should aim to complete 3 pages at least. Increase our run rate by 50%. Okay. Shall we start? So, and it is according to these desires that most of us pray. Like the king from the Babaji story. And the desires that we aim to fulfill tend to be of 4 specific varieties. In the yogic tradition, they are called as Artha, Kama, Dharma, Moksha. These aims are also associated with points ABCD, which we spoke about previously in the context of cleaning impressions. Now, first, let's speak about Artha, which is the desire for material satisfaction. It's a natural urge covering our most basic needs of food, clothing, shelter, but it can also manifest as a tendency to accumulate more and more. So, that's something that we should not do, accumulate more and more. We buy clothes, house, cars, electrons, you name it. Now, however, we are preoccupied with the latest smartphone and we are worried about paying the bills. It creates samskaric vibrations that ripple to point A. But with meditation, our external material focus gets directed inwards, not completely, but to the necessary extent. As a result, we no longer feel the need to seek contentment outside ourselves. We will found it within. Now, we cannot worry so much about our problems either. Our perspective widens, you see, and so our prayers no longer reflect that outward tendency. So, meditation transforms us totally. This transformation manifests in many ways. The next kind of desire is for sexual satisfaction, which is known as kama. The desire for kama forms impressions that settle at point B, creating passion. So please underline that the desire for kama forms impressions that settle at point B, creating passion. Okay. In just about every religion, there seems to be a tradition of celibacy. Should we avoid satisfying kama-based desires? Do we advocate the people reserve sex for procreation, for instance? I'll share one incident with you, said Daji. Once, when I was traveling in North India, an old man came to see me with a burning question. Why is that every time I have ever had sex, I feel guilty afterwards? He asked. Precisely because you only satisfy yourself and have never once thought about the other, I said. You see, guilt only comes when we have been selfish. It does not matter what that selfishness is about. It could be about sex, it could be anything else. When you take the New York City subway, for instance, and rush ahead of an elderly person to take a seat, could you possibly feel good about it? Whenever self is predominant, you feel guilty. Underline. Whenever self is predominant, you feel guilty. But when the opposite is the case, when your attitude is altruistic, you find a mystical joy bubbling up in your heart. Altruism is natural. When the dog barks to warn the sheep against the wolf, is it not an act of altruism? To take advantage of others, to turn another person into an object for the sake of one's own pleasure produces guilt. Underline that. To take advantage of others and to convert another person as an object for one's own pleasure produces guilt. Compare this situation, if you will, to a devotee who lovingly worships the statue of goddess. Love can turn a mere object into a worshipable goddess. Now, this is the choice. Convert an object into goddess or convert the goddess into an object. Underline that. I think that's a very important way of looking at things. Convert the object into goddess or convert the goddess into an object. One is selfless, other one is selfish. One is ennobling while the other one leads to guilt. Do you want to know the secret of transformation? It is only by ennobling others that we becomes ourselves becomes ennobled. To degrade another person is to degrade one's own self. And to ennoble another person doesn't mean that you are helping them becoming ennobled. It does mean that you recognize their innate nobility and revere that. We can pray all day and night for transformation, but it will not come until we approach others with respect, dignity, and reverence. You said that the end result of karma based desires is a feeling of passion. What is passion? So, any questions on this 2 pages? that we read? I think it's pretty straightforward. So when it is kind of selfish based, then it produces guilt. Otherwise, it does not produce any guilt. Okay. And then that particular sentence is important. Object getting converted into goddess, goddess getting converted into an object. It is fixated on one thing. What is passion? Being fixated on one thing, said Daji. Let us compare two words, passion and compassion. In passion, you are fixated on possessing the person who is the object of your desire. You are more concerned with your own satisfaction than with the other person's feelings. In compassion, on the other hand, you sacrifice yourself for the sake of the other. Passion leads to guilt, but in compassion, you become ennobled. You become joyful. Do you want to know how to attract grace? Be joyful, that is the prescription. Underline that. So be joyful, then you will attract grace. What can grace achieve? A single downpour of grace can achieve what a thousand transmission can never do, what a thousand blessings can never achieve. So be compassionate, so you will be joyful, and grace will rain down upon you. So, how to be joyful? Be compassionate. When you are joyful, grace actually falls on you. So, that's like sequence. When you put the other in front of you, you are said to be compassionate. So, next time when you go to Tirupati, put the other in front of you. Okay. Now, that doesn't mean to say that you will not eat the Tirupati laddu there as a prasad because you are putting the other. In other words, when we actually give equal importance to the feelings of others, that makes us more joyful. In other words, you cannot be imposing on the others all the time. So when we want to be compassionate, one of the things that we need to look out is, are we imposing what we think on others, or are we allowing the others people's feelings also to be expressed out? That's a very simple way of managing it. So if your manager has this authoritative, bossy type of influence on you, saying that I want this to be done on this time, that's it. No more questions or clarifications. That is not ennobling. That is not actually being, what do you say, paying attention to the feelings of the others. Now, you might have a compulsion to get a project done in a particular time. But at the same time, when you actually take the other person's feelings also into concern, I think they'll actually be able to relate to you and they'll actually go out of their way to help you because you are actually respecting their feelings, right? So, Gopal Krishna, you woke up just now.
Is there any line that we can draw between? Is there any line we can draw between going out of the line,
Going out of the line.
going out of our limit, basically? Yeah.
Can you hear? I can't hear properly.
Yeah, I'll give an
Now
example
better.
probably.
Uh,
Yeah, I just increase the sound also. There are instances, say for example, where one tries to sacrifice for the compassion so much that they get into trouble in their life.
that's
So
also
is there
wrong.
a line?
That's also wrong.
So
Now, this line, what you are talking about, is a flexible line. You cannot say that this is the cutoff. It depends on the person, it depends on your relationship with the person, it depends on the circumstance. So, there are so many factors. You can say there is a line, but it's a dynamic line. Now, also remember that, for example, you are feeling hungry, and the other person is also feeling hungry. Now, at that time, what you need to do is share the food that you got. Now you cannot say, I am feeling hungry, but I'll be very compassionate. I will give all the food to the other person. I will go hungry. Now that is not full correct manifestation of compassion. Correct manifestation of some compassion takes into account your feelings and balances it with the feelings of the others. It does not neglect your feeling. It does not neglect your own needs. So, neglecting or suppressing your need is not compassion. So for example, I'll just give you one simple example. Suppose you have some amount of money and that money is required for some of your family needs, but you are also very devoted to the mission. Now you feel that you want to donate that money to the mission. Now, when it is coming at the expense of fulfilling the needs of your family, then that's not a very good donation. It is your primary responsibility to take care of yourself and your family. And then whatever extra is there, you can actually donate to the mission after you have actually satisfied the need of yourself and the family. So where does the, like we spoke about the line, when does the desires become excessive in nature? So like that, when does compassion become excessive in nature? Spirituality does not allow any excess, either on the positive side or the negative side. Spirituality is about moderation all the time. You acknowledge everything, but everything should be done in moderation. So if somebody were to think of this possibility that they are going to donate their property to the mission and then expect the mission to take care of them, that's the wrong way of doing it. So what masters want you to do is learn to take care of yourself first. Learn to take care of yourself, learn to take care of your family, learn to take care of your neighborhood, and then where necessary seek help from for certain specific instances. That is what they would want you to do. Not put all the responsibility on the mission and say the mission is going to take care of me. No. Because remember, each of the missions have their own motto and objectives. Some are a spiritual organization, some are a social organization, some are a religious organization. Depending on the motto or the objective that they have actually set for themselves, they will be able to cater to certain aspects of our life. And our organization is a spiritual organization. So if you are going to tap and depend on this organization for your spiritual needs, that's the best thing that you're doing. Now, if you actually start leaning on this particular organization for your material needs, that might not be the best thing to do. So you need to be very clear. What are you depending on what in which organization? Does it make sense? So you cannot be too compassionate also. Okay, for example, if you just take the same example, you enter the metro, there's an elderly person, you rush to beyond them and you take the seat. Suppose you give the seat to that elderly person. The elderly person, suppose they get down halfway through and you are still further journeying. And there is a younger person now coming to occupy that seat. It's okay for you to occupy that seat. Nothing wrong with that. And then you cannot go to the next extent and say that I will never allow any other younger person to occupy the seat. I will wait for another older person to come and occupy the seat, even when nobody is inside. That's also foolish. So we need to be very clear regarding how does all these things manifest in our day-to-day life. When we become more and more compassionate and compassionate in alignment with spirituality. There is compassion without alignment with spirituality also. There could be people who are very compassionate. Excessive compassion also is an impediment for your spiritual journey. Please underline this. No quality, no good quality in isolation or in excess can actually lead you to the center. It's not possible. No good quality in isolation or in excess will lead you to the center. For you to go towards the source, you require all the good qualities in the right proportion. And now that Sudha sister is here, she was messaging me something that she has difficulty getting her daughter ready in the morning. So now imagine Sudha sister need to cook a bisibal bath. Now if you want to cook bisibal bath, Bharat will be very well aware after eating so many times in the ashram. You need to have the right ingredients in the right proportion. Then only you will get a nice bisibal bath. Right? If the dal is in excess, if the rice is in excess, if the spice is in excess, or if the salt is in excess, or if the sour is in excess, or under, you will not get a nice bisibal bath. Right? Every dish comes out nicely. One of the qualities to look out for if a dish has come out nicely is the balance of all the ingredients and their ability to mingle with one another to enhance the flavor of one another. Now, people might be wondering how much has he studied all this eating? He should have eaten a lot. One of the easiest examples to understand is the eating and the cooking and the eateries that we eat actually. When the things are in the right proportion, in balance with one another, in moderation, and in such a way that the quantity are actually enhancing the flavor of one another, you will get a very nice dish prepared. That's exactly how it is as far as our spiritual journey is also concerned. We will be able to exhibit the divinity within us when all the qualities that we develop in our spiritual journey are there in the right proportion and they mix in the right way so as to enhance the quality of one another. Does it make sense? Then you can actually go to the center. When all these things happen, at the 12th point, all these uh, qualities that we develop in this, all the chakras merge into one uniformity and then we become simple. Simplicities amalgamate all the characters that we develop at every chakra. When everything merges and to be able to get that level of simplicity, you need to have everything in the right proportion. Then when they all come together, they assimilate as one essence. That is what happens at the 12th point. So excessive compassion, excessive courage, excessive expansiveness, excessive knowledge, everything is not, if they are not in the right proportion, you will not be able to reach the level of simplicity. The simplicity will not be simple. It will have something in excess. Does it make sense? So in spirituality, sometimes even the bad qualities need to be there in some proportion to add enhance to it. The spice, if you put, what do you say, the ಏನಂತಪ್ಪ ಮೆಣಸಿನಕಾಯಿಗೆ
Mirchi in Hindi.
ಮಿರ್ಚಿ. The mirchi should be put in a small quantity, but mirchi should be there, no? Otherwise, you don't get that kick. Ganesh is well aware of that kick. He is nodding his head in strength. Yes, correct. South Indian spices, you take away the mirchi and see how it is. You will not feel like eating it. Hospital, if you go to the hospital now, in our hospital, it's good actually. The diet is good. In many hospitals, they give you a very bland diet. You don't feel like eating only. Array, your taste has come back after you have undergone some procedure after admission and you have recovered. Your taste has come back, but they don't allow the taste to be actually utilized for your health. They give you so bland diet that you feel like running away from the hospital. Right? So sometimes that's when the patients demand let the homemade food be allowed to the hospital. Then you can demand with your mother, I want this kind of food, I want this to be tasty, I want this particular ingredient to be put more. So, see, these are all things that we actually see every day. So, best example to understand these things is the eating. That's why I give the thing of visible birth. Okay, I don't know how many people started watering in the mouth thinking of visible birth. That's a different issue. I'm not going to ask that. But I'm just giving you a very simple example. So in spirituality, no good quality should be in excess. That's also important. All the good qualities also need to be moderated. And I said they actually add on to another. So in the first point, it will be acceptance. Then it will be joyful acceptance. Then when you come to the second point, it will be peaceful acceptance. Then in the third point, it will be joyful, peaceful, and loving acceptance. By the time you come to the fourth point, it will be joyful, peaceful, loving, and courageous acceptance. So they all add qualities to it. The quality is still acceptance, the basic quality, but you go on adding ingredients to it as you go higher and higher. Okay. So I've given you a very simple example of the metro. Gopal Krishna, I say I rarely take the metro. Most of the time I'm driving. There was this instance that in Bangalore, when people used to be given drop on a two-wheeler, some people used to kind of inject some syringe and then inject something to the person who actually helped. That there was some reports on the paper also. For some period of time, people stopped giving drops to anyone. Because why would they put themselves into risk for the sake of helping somebody? Suppose you are on a two-wheeler, electric two-wheeler, and the charge is low, and somebody waves your hand. Now you just imagine you require the charge to come back home. And you know, when you take another passenger in the electric two-wheeler, it actually draws more energy, more charge to draw two people. So it doesn't make any sense for you to give a drop to that particular person and then run out of charge and then push your vehicle back home. That is foolishness. Better don't give any drop to anybody else when you are running low on the fuel. So it's a very dynamic thing. Suppose you're in full charge, you just charged today morning and somebody is asking for lift. It hardly matters to you. You can give them a lift. Now, just because you did not give them a lift doesn't mean to say that you don't have compassion. Nothing like that. So it depends on many set of circumstances. Does it make sense? So it's a very evolving and dynamic thing. How do we get to know all these nuances of these things? As you progress higher and higher, many of these things will become very clear to you. That is the reason of the fifth point. In the fifth point, you develop clarity regarding how to utilize all the qualities that you develop in the Pinda Pradesh. That is the way you actually work out the point of clarity development. Every aspect of the quality that you develop in any other point, you will be able to use it appropriately as required, as necessary, in the right proportion, in the right way. That is the importance of point 5. Any other question, Bharat?
Yes, like if we do any action, day to day we do many action. So how to be cautious, or how do we know that we are forming samskaras or not?
That is a different question. You went in a different trajectory. That's a different question. So we will talk about it. Tonight we are having this question and answer session for all the English candidates. So you probably definitely somebody will ask. So if you attend that, you will probably catch it. We'll answer that there because it is going to take a different tangent. But it's an important question though, and I have given that as a homework to all the candidates. Now you are giving me that as a homework. Bharat is very intelligent. He knows how to give quietly homework to somebody. I thought you will be actually thinking about the visible bath and then be happy. Suddenly you are asking about samskara, not talking about visible bath. I was a bit surprised. Right. Anyway, I think that's a very important question. How to handle the desires, how to lead a life, or how to manage samskaras. in the management of samskaras, all these factors will come. If it is already formed, how to handle it and how to manage it, how not to form it. So that all those aspects will come in the context of samskaras. It's the same thing with desires. If these two things we can catch hold of, you would have got a very big change in terms of your lifestyle, in terms of way that you look at your life. Okay. Anyway, shall we finish one more page before we go? Otherwise, we'll not finish. I'm telling you, I thought we'll probably finish by the end of the month. It looks like we have extended by one more week because of all the visible work that Sudha sister has cooked. So don't blame me. Okay. Where were we? We talked about passion, compassion. Examples. See, these are all the kind of ways in which you need to be able to give specific examples to people to make them understand. Otherwise, if you just read, then you'll have some idea, but you don't know how to implement it on the ground. Most important aspect of spirituality is how to implement it on the ground in our day-to-day interactions. That's the most critical component of learning in spirituality. Okay. When you are loving, caring, and compassionate with others, you are not trying to get anything from them. You do not manipulate others. You see, the reason that most people like to receive is because they feel incomplete. But though they receive, they are never complete. Wholeness only comes by giving, and the only real gift is of one's own self. Now you are gradually metamorphosizing from an abhyasi to a perceptor means you are metamorphosizing from a role of a receiver to the role of a giver. And that's a very big change. Can you see that? Till now, as an abhyasi, you are all receiving all the time. And now you are gradually metamorphosizing into a giver. And that's a very big change. So when you wear both the hats of the abhyasi and the preceptor, you are giving also, you are receiving also. And when you learn the art of giving and receiving together, you actually become more selfless in nature. Your ego gets refined. Now, many people ask about why we should apply for SNP program. And this is one of the critical points that you need to catch. You apply for the SNP program because you can now have two roles, a receiver and a giver, a receiver and a giver. By giving, you become complete, and only the real gift is one's own self. So, give of yourself. Then you will find that you are receiving more, much more than you could ever possibly give. How to give all of this away? You will wonder. You cannot. You can only continue to give. Gopal Krishna, you want to give something to me? A question?
So this is about a mother actually. So a mother of the family, when she cooks food or something, she serves everybody without keeping food for herself. There are multiple cases where she doesn't get to eat the same food. So isn't that compassionate over the line? Uh,
Correct. It is compassionate over the line.
but it's normalized now. That's how I'm
That is
saying.
because
It's
we
been
have
normalized.
normalized in the society. Nobody asked us to do it, but we have normalized that in the society. But need not be the case. If a mother is, say, she's done 10 chapatis and she's given 9 chapatis, she's just kept one chapati for herself. It's also important for us, for her to take care of herself also. Nothing wrong in just keeping one chapati away and saying that I'm eating it later on when everybody else has finished. Ideally, the best thing is after the cooking is over, the mother should cook in the divine remembrance, and then the family as a whole should actually consume the food together. That's the best way of doing it. Not that you are sitting in front of the computer and mother will serve your food in front of the computer while you are attending a office meeting. That's not the best way of doing it. So after she has cooked the food in divine remembrance, you have to consume it together. It hardly takes 10-15 minutes time to eat it together. And that will actually be very, very helpful. You actually tend to bond and tend to exchange lot of things during the food. And if you're not in the habit of doing it, and if you are in the habit of sitting and eating in front of the laptop, give that habit away. Because I know what you do. That's why I'm saying. Always the family should have one meal together in a day. Make it mandatory. Everybody should come together and have one meal together. At least try to make it the norm. It may not be possible all the days, but at least every day try it. That's the best time. When we are eating food, we are relaxing. We are very relaxed. We cannot eat food in stress. So when we all sit, especially when you sit down with a crossed leg, that will actually keep your health also going. Don't eat the food at the table, at the dining table. You'll be a good mehman for orthopedic doctor after 40 years. Okay? So always try to eat food on the ground together. It may take 15-20 minutes, but that's a time well spent. And when you actually learn to sit down on the ground cross-legged for a long time, your knee and health, the hip joint and the knee joint and the ankle joint, all the three joints will be very well functional when you sit down. If you don't learn to sit down, you actually are making your joints weak. So, and if you sit down regularly, you actually tend to eat a lot more food. And when you actually eat together while talking, you actually consume a lot more food because you are talking and enjoying and eating. So that's very, very important. How we actually consume, how the food is cooked, how we actually consume the food, both are actually important. And unfortunately, we have given away our traditional way of eating things. So we need to go back to that traditional way in order to maintain health also, in order to maintain. We have people like 85, 86 sitting down and eating with cross leg in traditional families. They still sit down and eat. And that's the best way to eat. And obviously, there are families where you actually think of the divine before you consume the food. So that's the maxim, one of the maxims, eighth maxim, I think. You actually eat the food in the remembrance of God. That actually makes you purer by the day. You might think eating food is only physical, but if you actually eat food with the alignment of thought of the God with the food, that entire food is going to not only nourish you at the physical level, it nourishes you at the mental and the spiritual level. It makes you purer. Okay? So now Gopal Krishna will be looking forward. Don't worry, I'll keep looking forward for having a good meal to the whole day today. Bharat will say, why should I be behind? I'll also do that. Ganesh, you want to ask something?
Yeah, the same example of mother, most of the time, uh, that's the time we need to show compassion towards mother. And most of the time we ignore. We don't take whether mother is having or not. So that's what I want to make that point.
See that point, suppose there is very little food. There are two children growing. Mother giving the food away to both the children and going herself mm, to starve for that particular time, that is okay. That is part and parcel of the loving care of the mother. But when there is enough food for everyone, serving everything to everybody and not actually eating herself, that is not compassion. That is not taking herself. That's why we need to draw a line where it is considered okay, where it is not considered okay. So, mother as a human being also has a duty to herself to take care of herself for the larger good of the family. Now, you cannot have one person starving all the time and then other people eating because the people who eat also will go into ill health. The person who is going to starve also is going to go into ill health. That is not what we want. We want everyone to take care of themselves, and that's their primary duty, and that includes mother also. No different. Any role you might play in life, you need to learn to take care of yourself for the good of everyone in the family. Okay. So, how to best to make sure that your mother is also having the food? Eat it together. That's the easiest thing to do. Then you will also know that she is also having her share of the food, and she is also managing herself. You don't need to tell her that, but this is what you do. In practice, you do it. That's all. Okay. So, in spite of the best of the things, we are not able to go beyond 2-3 pages. Best of the efforts. Okay. So, we will stop here. But lot of good examples today.